Hello and thank you for joining me. Today's practice is about the connection between the lumbar spine and the pelvic girdle. We're specifically going to be looking at ways that we can both mobilize these lower two lumbar vertebrae as well as stabilize and strengthen them. So the practice that we're going to do is going to be about relaxing the tension in the lower back and bringing the lower back from what happens to us throughout most of our day, which is the lower back is loaded in flexion, so the weight of our body hangs in the vertebra of the lower back, which actually denies the lower back its birthright, which really is the ability to hyperextend a little bit, so it goes into a little bit of a concavity. And you can see from the skeleton that the vertebral bodies are a little bit thicker in the front because the load and the pressure is meant to go through the front, not the back of the vertebra. So what you might experience today is a little bit of tenderness and a little bit of unfamiliarity, but I encourage you to, I'll give you some cues as to how to work and modify the amount of pressure that are on the props, and just allow yourself the experience to listen to what I am cueing and see if you can create the experience in your body. So this is a little bit of a different way to communicate. Usually when we communicate, somebody tells you what to do and you create an action, whereas this is cueing or telling you how to feel, and then you move from the experience of feeling. So give it a try. For today's lower back to pelvic girdle connection work, you're going to need two props, a black spinal strip and a blanket. This is a cotton blanket, so when I roll it, it's going to have a certain firmness to it, but it's not so hard that it could potentially, bruise or damage my soft tissue in the lower back. And we're going to begin today's practice with the spinal strip first. So before we start, we'll get our blanket ready. So we're just going to take it from the short end and we're going to fold it as tightly or roll it as tightly as we can. And know that it's a blanket, so there will be little lumps and imperfections in its roll, but ultimately we are looking to create some support for our lumbar spine. And we're just going to put that off to the side. And we know where it is. We're going to start with our black spinal strip, and we're going to simply fold our spinal strip in half. Part of the tension that builds in our lower back is caused by the forward head posture or the rolling of the shoulders that flexes the spine and also loads the lower back. So the first thing I want to do is speak to the possibility of extending the upper back to open the breathing and mobilize the vertebra in between the shoulder blades, and also minimize the muscular tension in the upper back and shoulders, because we all complain of sore back, sore shoulders, tight neck. And then we're going to move into some options to relax the lower back and bring it into better movement and coordination. So the black strap is folded in half, and we're going to take the fold. There's two ways you can do this. You can place it against the back of your body and then lay down, or you can take it onto the floor behind you and lay down onto it. When you lay down onto the folded black spinal strip, you just want to make sure that the top of the fold is about an inch above the crown of your head. So you just take a moment, feel above the crown of your head. You want about an inch of space there. And in most every body, that will bring the bottom of the fold towards the bottom tips of your shoulder blades. So we're targeting the upper and mid-thoracic spine right now. Bring your hands to your lower ribs and close your eyes. And just allow your shoulders to begin to drop back and soften towards the floor. Maybe if you're at home doing this, you can have somebody dim the lights or put yourself in a more relaxing, quiet space. Because the first key to reducing tension in the body is reducing the amount of stressors. And so we want to bring ourselves into sort of a quiet and grounded and relaxed space. And we start to pay attention to the breath. So just begin to allow the movement of the breath to very gently move up the front of your spine. And then as you exhale, it will move back down the front of your spine. So you are, in your mind's eye, contacting the front of the spine with the movement of the breath. Every time you exhale, allow the body to become a little bit heavier, a little bit softer, as though the muscles were melting away from the bones. Now, from your hands on your lower ribs, let's move them down to the lower belly. So the pinky fingers are just above the crest of your pelvis and the thumbs are reaching up towards the diaphragm. And take a nice deep breath into the palms of your hands. So you will feel the palms of your hands gently lifting upwards towards the ceiling with the movement of your belly. So the reflex of the inhale will cause the belly to expand and the lower back to softly lift away from the floor. So we are moving away from this idea of tucking the pelvis or flattening the lower back against the floor. We're doing really exactly the opposite, but without muscular effort. We're just using the breath and ensuring there's a little bit of space between the lower back and the floor. And once you have confirmed that position, you feel the weight of your pelvis is sinking back into the ground, you can move your hands back to your lower ribs. And now as you exhale, you can just pull your lower ribs down gently. If you pull the lower ribs too far, the neck will start to lift away from the black strap and the chin will rotate up towards the ceiling. So while your eyes are closed, just play with how much you can adjust the position of your ribs without changing the tension or the alignment in your neck or your shoulders. So when we draw the ribs in and down, all we're doing is stabilizing the more movable part of our spine. So right at the bottom of our thoracic spine, where we meet the lumbar spine, we have a tremendous capacity for movement. And we want to eventually use the pressure in our movement to stabilize and strengthen the lower back as well as mobilize the upper back. Now with your next inhalation, press your feet into the floor and your shin bones forward. And as you apply a little more pressure into your upper back, see if you can just feel your neck getting longer. So we'll feel as though the back of your head is just sliding up the spinal strip as your chin begins to tip towards your chest. So you're garnering a little bit more length at the base of the skull, and you're physically beginning to feel the weight of your body lengthen as it softens. Breath is in the belly, shoulders are soft and heavy, collarbones are long from the breastplate out to the tips of the shoulders. And as you inhale, you can begin to think of inviting the strap a little deeper into the body, like your breath could hook into the front of the spinal strip and lift it into the body a little bit. So we're maximizing the pressure, and the pressure will begin to create a longer spine and soften the muscles that grip or hold onto the habitual posturing of the back. Okay. In order to bring a little bit more mobility, we're going to add a rotation here. So bring the sides of your feet together and just stretch your arms out to the sides of your body. So the palms will go down into the floor. And give yourself a moment to settle the weight of your arms here, because initially you might feel a stretch or a pull moving through the upper arms. And then as you exhale, the back of your ribs will soften towards the floor. As you inhale, the pot of the belly will rise along with the low back. And then we're going to take the left foot 1 inch from the floor. So we're going to lean the inside of the left leg against the inside of the right leg. And we're going to begin to rotate the knees over to the side. Now, as your knees are rotating, breathe up the length of your spine and reach towards the crown of your head. So I want you to visualize that as the weight of your legs are getting heavier towards the floor, the length in your spine is increasing. And I want you to visualize and imagine pressure moving up the length of your spine to create this rotation. So your legs are moving with your pelvis, your lower back is moving with your pelvis, and your spine is beginning to rotate from the weight of the rotation. As you inhale, bring your knees back into center, allowing the left foot to land on the floor. Pick your right foot up. Nice deep breath in. Soften the jaw, soften the eyes. Just allow the weight of the knees to move the hips, the weight of the hips to make the lower back also move, and the rotation begins up the length of your spine. And the right arm is heavy and soft to the floor. And then we'll bring the knees back into center, and we'll go one more time over to the right. And this time we might add a little bit of movement by just inviting this left hip bone towards the right. So it'll look like a little bit more extension, lifting that left hip up and pushing it towards the right. And then coming back to center and lowering the knees to the left. As soon as the body meets its end range of movement, you can add a little bit more by now moving your right hip towards the left. And then moving back into center. And step your feet hip width apart. And go ahead and roll over onto your side. We'll just take the black strap, place it beside us, and now we're going to move on to our felt pad. You still feel some warmth in your upper back. You're aware of where the pressure of the strap was. You're going to bring the back of your pelvis right against your rolled up blanket. And as you lay down, you'll allow the pelvis to lift up slightly. So this is almost like a teeter-totter, where the center of the body is at the high point of the roll. And as far as location goes for the roll, I'm looking for the top quarter of the pelvis and the top part of the sacrum and the lowest part of the lower back, so L4 and L5. So remember how I spoke about how movement likes to occur where the ribs end against the spine? So we have this area of a lot of mobility. We're going to use our hands on our low ribs to help us make this stabilizing connection. So the ribs are going to move down, not so much that we cause the neck to compensate, but enough that we start to feel a little more pressure moving into the low back. And then we use the breath again. So when we breathe into the lower belly, the expansion of the lower belly will facilitate the movement of the lower back. And we're going to begin to relax into the weight of our hip creases, as well as the back of our pelvis. So the pelvis is going to be relaxing into the roll, and then it's going to start to tip forward. And that tipping forward of the pelvis is beginning to pull those lower lumbar vertebra away from the upper lumbar vertebra. So we're creating traction through the lower back. And this is not done with willpower. It's not done with a desire to bring my pelvis to the floor. It's simply monitoring the movement of my ribs, monitoring the movement of my breath, and allowing the weight of my pelvis to move towards the floor in gravity. So by the end of the movement, the muscles on either side of the spine, the quadratus lumborum, have relaxed into a slightly longer position. And there is suddenly a sense of deep midline awareness moving from the center of my spine in towards the tip of my tailbone. So we can spend a couple of minutes here with the eyes closed, the weight of the pelvis sinking heavier and heavier to the floor as we recognize that the more we relax into pressure, the more the stress relieves itself from our thinking patterns, and the better we are at softening into whatever is arising. Remember, the breath in the lower belly will facilitate the extension of the lower back, and that gentle downward movement of the ribs will add a little more pressure to the lower back as well. And then we just bring the sides of our feet together. So we toe heel into the midline, and we're simply going to lean the knees to the right. We're just going to keep both of our feet flat on the floor, and we're going to use the weight of our leaning knees and the weight of our leaning pelvis to put some pressure on the right side of our low back. We just wait. We're not interested in twisting. We're not interested in bringing the legs as we were earlier all the way down to the floor when we were on the spinal strip. That's a twist or a rotation that we were working on. This is a lean. We're simply leaning into habitually tight or abused muscles in the lower back. And we're letting them feel pressure. And we're maybe also connecting with the lower back in a way that is pleasant. It is not pain-inducing. So we build a relationship with our lower back that is one that is based out of more of a pleasant or comfortable sensation, as opposed to one that is uncomfortable. This is a big body of muscles, and it can take a lot of leaning, a lot of pressure. And it's nice. The feeling is nice. It's soft. And then you allow the knees to drift back to the center. The feet remain on the floor. And then you just go into the other direction. So we move into the left quadratus lumborum, the left side of the lumbar spine. So when we're sitting and we're told to sit straight, the muscles that we're currently working with, that we're leaning into, are the main activators. So they're the ones that contract and they rotate our pelvis forward and they add rigidity to the spine. It gives us a sense that we're sitting straighter, but in reality we are denying pressure to the lowest part of our lower back, and we are, over time, straining the part of our back that already likes to move a lot. So the ribs are moving in and down. And then the knees come back into the center. And we toe heel the feet hip width apart. So also from the time that we spend sitting, or the time that we spend on our bikes, or the time that we spend running, or the time that we spend doing our daily activities, the muscles between the knee and the back of the pelvis, otherwise known as the hamstrings, also tend to get a little bit short and tight because we seldom spend any extended period of time with the leg in extension. And so chronic tension on the back of the legs can also feed to tension in the lower back. So we're going to start to just activate that connection and see if we can maybe minimize some of that chronic tension. So coming back onto your black spinal strip, we'll take it in both hands, bring the right thigh into the belly, hook the arch of your right foot into the strap, and pause here. So what I'm doing is I'm reducing the tension on the back of the leg by bending the knee, and I'm allowing the lower back to rest into the roll. So the arch of my lower back, like my hand, is shaped from the upper lower back towards the tip of the tailbone over the roll. And then we're going to begin to straighten our leg, but our attention is in the lower back as we do this. So we are attempting to keep the lower back exactly as it is as we begin to challenge the back of the leg to lengthen a little bit more. Okay. So we have to do this quickly because the moment, or slowly, my apologies, slowly, because the moment we move quickly, we push the straightening of the leg into the lower back and into the neck. So there's an immediate compensation pattern when we straighten the leg too quickly. It's easier to push the lower back into flexion than it is to apply a long load onto the hamstrings. So come back, bend the knee, draw the thigh into the belly, and just work with how straight you can make your own leg. If you can't get it fully straight, maybe you back out a little bit on the strap, moving the arms closer towards the direction of your knee. And then perhaps over time, as you relax into the weight of your leg, you can begin to bring the leg closer in. Okay, so we're working on hamstring extension, knee extension, but we're also maintaining extension in the lower back. And then bring your right foot down to the floor, and we'll go on to the left side. Foot into the strap, start with the knee bent, left side of low back relaxes to roll, arms are heavy on the strap, adjust the position of your leg in accordance with the capacity for your leg to lengthen. So lower down will be easier to lengthen, closer to the body will be more challenging. And then very gently, as you breathe into the leg, start to stretch the tissue in the back of the leg, from the back of the pelvis into the back of the knee. Breathe well into the belly, let your shoulders soften, feel the extension through your leg, and check in with your neck. You know the minute you move into your lower back, your neck is going to start to lift away from the floor. So that's a sure sign that you're not relaxing into the lower back. You're not pressing the pressure towards your tailbone. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to work with something called a core reflex. And this core reflex is the deep belly muscles, the transverse abdominal muscles that actually wrap all the way around the torso like a girdle. They respond to the position of the lower back. So as the lower back rounds or flexes, the belly gets soft. So in this position, the belly is soft. As I start to work the extension of the lower back over the roll, the belly will get firmer and firmer in response to the moving lower back. So here we go. Bring the right foot into the strap. Pull gently down on the strap so you're making a connection between your leg and your hip joint. And then just test out your flexibility in both of your legs. Now understand, you have 3 hamstrings on this leg, you have 3 hamstrings on this leg, which means 6 muscles are pulling on the back of your pelvis. So eventually those muscles are going to pull the pelvis in the direction of the legs, and you'll notice the lower back starts to round into the roll. And we're sort of in a very familiar position right now, so lumbar flexion. And there's no tone whatsoever in the belly. There's no activation in the core. And then I'm going to take my right leg out of the strap and reach it up to the ceiling. And I'm going to keep my left leg where it is, holding on to it through the strap. And I'm going to begin to lower the extended leg away from me. Okay. Right about a third of the way down, I start to feel it. The position of my lower back is changing. The weight of my leg is moving through the lower back, and my core is just automatically engaging to support the descent of this leg. The neck stays relaxed, the shoulders stay relaxed, breath is in the belly, and you hold here. Make both legs longer. Don't let the heel rest on the floor. Keep the knee straight, and you start to feel it right away. A stillness in the strength, and it's manageable. You don't have to breathe heavy. And then as you inhale, you bring the leg back up, keeping the lower back as it is, and we'll change sides, bringing the right leg into the strap and the left foot out. And then we start to lower the left leg down, and we just feel it. You begin to feel the pressure building in your belly. It's like the inner tube inside a bicycle tire. It can be flat and ineffective, or it can be firm and supportive. And as the leg lowers, this becomes firm and supportive. It's a different strength than the six-pack, than the superficial belly muscles. It's a deep integrated strength that supports the weight of the leg and keeps the lower back in a stable position. And slowly bring the leg back up. Now take the strap and bring it over your knees. Hold on to either side of the strap, just on the outer edge of your shin bones. And we're going to, again, let the upper part of our sacrum, the lowest part of our lower back, rest against that roll. But we're going to start to control the weight of our legs as the lowering of the legs brings the tip of the tailbone towards the floor. So slow, gentle traction of the lower back. And I'm holding up the weight of my legs. I don't let them drop too quickly. And I just now lengthen both sides of the lower back, the muscles that we leaned into just a few moments ago. And as the pelvis reaches the floor, we let the feet come down. And then we move the strap off to the side. Bring your feet hip width apart now to stabilize the muscles moving all the way down into the tailbone. The hands will move back onto the ribs. And as you exhale, I want you to imagine the tip of your tailbone pushing into the floor, but don't let your ribs lift. So if you push the tailbone into the floor and let your ribs lift, you'll be contracting those 2 muscles that we've been working this whole last practice on relaxing, the QLs. So I want us to bring those tiny multifidi zipper-like muscles that are very, very close to the spine and reach all the way down to the sacrum. I want those to activate. So for that reason, I'm going to pull my ribs in and down. I'm going to press my tailbone into the floor, and what will happen is my feet will get a little bit light. I'm not lifting the feet because that adds a lot of pressure into the front of the hips. I'm just feeling that when I push the tailbone into the floor, the ribs move down, not up, and the belly gets firm. It's that core reflex that is stabilizing the natural extension of my lower back. And it's good for your back because the lower back is structurally built to support load and carry load into the hips and the legs. And if the lower back joints are stiff and the muscles that surround the lower back are weak, that movement is not going to reach the midline of your body. You relax now. Inhale. Your pelvis will float away from the floor. Big deep breath in, the neck gets a little longer, crown of head stretches towards the top of the mat, and one more time, exhale. Ribs move down, tailbone pushes into the floor, feet get a little bit light, inner tube gets firm, hold. You feel it deep in your spine, right towards your sacrum. And then relax. Well, you can do this 10 or 20 times. At the end of the day, when you've been sitting, when your lower back is a little bit sore, you take your time to relax on the roll and you start to create movement with your legs and you put a little pressure to your tailbone to stabilize those deep muscles in the lowest part of your spine. To come off, we're going to move feet to floor, hips up. Oh, it's a little achy sometimes at this point, so pause, give yourself a moment. The body adjusts very quickly. It's achy because your lower back is in a preference of flexion and you've just spent 15 or 20 minutes in extension. So when joints are sticky and they change direction, it can be alarming. But it goes away very quickly. And you keep lifting. Now you're strengthening the hamstrings that you were stretching, the bum muscles on the back of your hips, and your ribs are still moving in. You're simply lifting your spine into extension. Watch the knees don't go wide. Stay on the inner edges of your feet. Move the felt pad out of the way, or the roll, the blanket, and then stretch your arms out. Put your palms down on the floor, and just keep lifting up if you can. Lift your hips a little higher. So now maybe you start to overcome some of the resistance in the front of your hips. And you're strengthening those deep muscles all the way into your tailbone, through the inner line of your legs and down into the inner edges of your feet. And then exhale and come down. And then windshield wiper your knees from side to side. So I want to finish up today and teach you how to sit in a very light and easy way that doesn't activate those QL muscles on either side of your lower back. So we're going to slowly bring ourselves off of the mat and into a seated posture. So if you have a chair handy, you could grab a chair.